There's like a lot of words to this, but we'll be talking about how it can simplify the platform engineers' lives, also the developers' lives in general in the organization. And also, as Jonathan said in the keynotes, like how it can solve the productivity issues, how can we boost our productivity. So we'll be discussing about that. A little info about me. I'm Siddhant, software engineer at Gitpod. I'm working with Gitpod for over 3 years now. I'm also a maintainer at OpenFGA, which is like a CNCF sandbox project, which is open source alternative for the Google Zanzibar. And also being a co-creator and the maintainer of GitHub 1S, which was like a github.dev, but we shipped it first so that you can view any of the GitHub repository in a VS Code looking environment. You can check my socials also. So since I work at Gitpod, but I will try to be not a vendor pitch thing, because especially this remote dev environment thing is like pretty close to me, because when I was in second year of my college, I got to know about Replit, which is like an online IDE. And you know the college, the laptops are not great, so that's the one thing which I really love. And that's the reason we built GitHub 1S. So yeah, I will be mostly telling about my experience, my learning, and what are the ecosystem, how the companies build it, like what are the different companies doing it in this space, and what could be the different methodologies, or like you wanted to build it, you want to buy some software, that's depend on the platform engineering experience in the company. That's like the quick agenda we will be having. Again, like we have a lot to cover, but yeah, let's get started. So the problem, especially like the larger enterprise problems is like the standardization thing. You have like a larger repositories, larger code setups, which have like multiple lines of code docs. You need to run these commands. You have to like certain things of like certain node version, Docker version, or like some different operating system itself. So there's like a lot of context missing. Like, so when a new joinee joins a company, it's like a lot to grasp on, and that's the reason which like the onboarding takes around, like it takes around like weeks, days to weeks to ship a first PR, because like the whole onboarding experience is getting like invested or wasted in setting up the environment, which could be easily automated. So this is like the core thing. It becomes like a major problem. Like it works on my machine, but it is not working in CI/CD. And then again, it becomes like a production thing. Like, so developers are keep busy with the like how to set up this thing and how I configure, what Ubuntu version I should use, and all these things. And of course, it extends the load to the shadow IT team and also the platform engineers, because as a platform engineer, your responsibility is to make developers happy. Like they should be just focusing on the developer time, like the building time, and not be dealing with like this version, the CLI version, or setting up the secrets. According to this DORA research 2024, which like one of the reputed research in the space, it takes around 2 to 3 days to resolve like it works local issues. Again, it takes a good number of time, which shouldn't be bothering for the developers. And again, if you have like a larger teams and like, of course, like the limited platform teams, it increases the setup problem support tickets. So like this version is not working, this thing is not working. So everybody tries to like pull down thing, and of course, you also need to be take careful about their time, for the developers' time. And of course, the environment management stuff, it takes around a lot of toil to get it done. So, okay, how we as a platform engineers can solve it, like how we can simplify our own life and also the developers' life, so that we both in a win-win situation also, how we can boost up the productivity overall in the organization. So there are some solutions out there, traditional solutions, which is how most of the companies are still working with. Most of the enterprise are still trying to migrate to a more sophisticated solution. But like these are the major 3 things which people have. So this is like what I saw. So of course, they have like a shadow workarounds, like, okay, let's just install this patch for now, and then it will be working for you. Of course, Dockerization thing, you can containerize your project, you have this is going on. But again, Docker works differently on Mac, differently on Ubuntu. So it's like you have to take care about a lot of things. And again, you will be coming down to the relatively lesser ticket. Again, it will be the similar problems we have. And the most thing, the documentation and scripts, which a lot of the README files you can find in a lot of the repositories, which should be updated. But again, like it's hard to maintain that with the project growth because it's a longer problem. So overall, it's like a whole spiral, like the chaos spiral you have. Different version, different workarounds, and like lots of Slack threads, and like why this is not working. I think some of the companies I used to like open source work with, open sourcely, on mostly the Slack channels have like a whole setup instructions pinned, like, okay, these are the steps you need to follow to get started, even in the open source. So like, if you think from the open source perspective, the best thing you can provide to a newbie or like a new person coming to your project is like, how can I get started? How can I play around with it so that you can get more interest in the product? So then you can adopt like solutions like these for this. Of course, you don't need to build the whole thing, but at least have some consistent environments which your contributors and your maintainers are working on. And of course, the new hires problem, like how you can improve the onboarding cycle, like so that you hired someone expensive, the SD3 is like the major one, and then you have to figure it out, like what are the secrets you need. So you can just have a single environment which have everything set up, get in running. So yeah. So here comes the CDEs, which spells out the cloud dev environments, and this will be like how it takes and what it takes. So in general, there's a CDE which consists of a compute, a storage, a network, or like the developer interface which your developer will be working with. Compute, it could be anything like the Kubernetes pods, VMs, or just the containers, like the web containers sort of thing. Storage, again, it depends on the requirements of that particular project, or like it's based on the organization your project has. It could be ephemeral, it could be persistent, based on your use case, and also on the security boundaries you need. The networking stuff, how you wanted to have those, your system talking to that external system or like the internal system you build. How are the security boundaries hard? And then lastly, the interface, like how your developers are working on. And because some of the organizations they have their own tooling, like some of the CLI tools in the terminal. And of course, nowadays we have like so many IDEs, some of the native VS Code IDEs, and also the forked one, the cursor, windsurf, and also the whole JetBrains thing. So again, it depends what your devs are using. So we wanted to build the integrations because we don't want to rule them. Like we don't want stop using VS Code, just shift to JetBrains. Sometimes it depends on their use case or like maybe the admin policies that you need to be take care on so that you don't need to force it. We just need to build the integration in such a way so that at least the most people are happy with this. And of course, the more environment complexity is there, and it will increase of the environment, the development, like the platform team time. So I think that's one of the things we are. So in this diagram, it's like basically I tried to cover the VM-based and the Kubernetes-based compute layer, and it will be the integration layer, which you can build it, you can buy it. It's sort of the integration layer. You have the multiple network gateways or the things the service might be needing to get system up and running. On the broadly, we have like so many tools in the market. So some are the Kubernetes-based, some are the VM-based, and of course some are just focused for the web developments and more of that. So Kubernetes-based, so Uber has the DevPod. They've released the blog post in 2022. How DevPod increases the productivity and how it can simplify the platform issues, like how they can onboard people quickly. And so we will be also talking about the Uber's DevPod in the later case study. And of course, we have in the market the GitLab workspaces. Gitpod used to be a Gitpod classic thing. Coder, which is like mostly the self-hosted, self-managed thing. And they also have, so they are in the both market, the Kubernetes provider and also in the VM provider. So on the VM-based thing, we have GitHub Codespaces, which is mostly tied to the Azure compute and also the GitHub ecosystem. So if you are using GitLab then, or like other thing, you either need to use Coda, Gitpod, or that's a GitLab thing. GitLab also tied to the GitLab, so I think that's sort of a vendor lock-in sort of thing. Gitpod, the new Gitpod, I think after October, we have like a new Gitpod, which is the VM-based thing. Again, we'll be talking about thing in later. Google Cloud Workstation, I think it's still in beta in the preview, but it also does the great job. If you are on the Google Cloud, you can have like a sort of a great ecosystem so that you don't need to some separate integrations and all of this. But again, it has like a limited integration for the IDEs and tooling. And Google Jules, I think one of the most interesting recent thing, it's mostly the AI plus the sandbox thing, so that you don't need to set up anything locally. It has the Gemini inbuilt, and you can just directly chat and code in real time. And Shopify Spin. Shopify is like a pretty interesting space. So they have explored with VM. They tried with the GCE VM, and then they built their own something called ISO Spin, so which we'll be talking about in the later. And we have a lot of the web focus thing, like so mostly the web dev. The Stackblades, now they have the something called AI with like the bold.new. You might have heard about it. It's like the AI plus sandbox thing. Code Sandbox, Replit, as I said, like it's only the online IDE. You don't need to, you can't integrate your local editors and terminals and all. So yeah, how, like what are the major differences, how it works, like what are the major differences we have? The local dev is, of course, the current state I will be considering. It's like, it still takes 2 to 3 days to get set up, have the documentation. And of course, it takes a lot of a developer time, which is like a costly thing in this space. CDEs still got a lot better. We get like a pre-tested consistent environment so that suppose I am like a lead or something who will be like reviewing the PRs. I have a workspace, I've been working on it, and then someone sends a PR. You can directly open that PR into a workspace, in a different workspace. So you have like a parallel working environment. And you've done the review, you've done the tested environment thing, which is already configured with your CDE. And then you can literally review it and close it, and then back to your work. So that you can do the parallel developments in a real time. So that, again, when you're doing locally, you don't need to, like, you have to check out the other branch and all, you have to set up and all things. On the other side, it's like a separate environment. You can just get up and running. And the new part, of course, the AI Hive, we need to consider. That's AI and CDE. This like, of course, you can build things like locally, like you can set up Cloud Core, Gemini, CLI locally. That's totally fair, but it has like a compute limit, like the GPU limit thing. And if you wanted to learn, like you want to like make things in like a local LLM thing, there's a limitation to that. And of course, if you are like working on a big project and it has like a multiple file changes from AI, if you have tried or not, I think it really suffers because the major difference it takes, the VS Code APIs or not, it takes a lot of the CPU thing to get the multiple file chains running. And of course, we are talking about now the agents and the sub-agents. Then it needs to be your environment, your setup needs to be perfect, or like not the perfect, at least a better, so that it can handle that amount of file changes or load. And now we have like multi-agent thing, and we can do also the AI programming, so that you have the whole environment context. So again, you don't need to set up thing manually. You can just have a Cloud Code CLI across your workspace members, so that as an admin, yes, a platform engineer lead, you don't need to be worried about the policies and other thing. You can just have these tools specified, and that's up and running. It will again, it will explore that parallel AI work thing, so that you can work literally on the 3 to 4 issues. You're working on some issue, you give that AI bot an issue, hop to the other issue while it's working. You can take a look on the. That's a limited way in the local because again, so Cloud Code has released the AI guide thing, which you can use the Git work tree. But you can also, it has like a limitation that you can do. And with that, like the whole isolated environments are running so that you don't need to be take care about checking out the branches again and again while working on the different issues at the time. So one of the major solutions which is stuck there, so there are other also, but there's a dev containers, which is like by Microsoft. It's an open source standardization dev container JSON file. It has, of course, it is backed by a community also. Like it has a lot of exactly the spec called features. So you can, so for example, you wanted to install the Cloud code across the environment. You can specify that as a feature in your dev container file, which will be based on the GitHub container registry. But again, if you wanted to use your own Docker files, your own private registries, you can also configure that with the secrets which is available. And this, like on the side, we have like a smaller example, like how the AI enhanced Python dev you can do. It has like some native steps. You can have some of the system requirements you can set, because a lot will be wondering that what if my project just want like 8 gigabytes of RAM, and some new member is using like a whole GPU thing. You can also set policies in this, like, so what would be the major requirements? And of course, in the CD solution-wise, in the admin console, you can also limit, you can restrict the classes, like the workspace classes, that you can't use these many machines or like these bigger machines, because it's like a relatively easier project, a basic project. And what are the extensions the company-wide people are using? So yeah, there's a lot to it. You can also go to the containers.dev, which is, again, a Microsoft thing. And you can also see the examples out there. Like you wanted to build around Node, Ruby, Python, whatever the ecosystem you have, or Go. They have things, they have the packages. And of course, with the whole dependencies thing, so it's like the GitHub. So if you're using the GitHub container registry, so GitHub would be maintaining that, like the Microsoft folks and the other folks will be maintaining that. So you don't need to worry about the security vulnerabilities. Because it's an open source, so a lot of people get also active, like whenever the new CV is coming in. So people try to patch it and also update it to our thing. So the real world examples, who all did this? So a lot of the companies also have this, like internally. I think Intuit, Netflix also build the tooling inside this. And they also have the greater, I think, engineering blogs. But we would be covering in the major. Uber, it's a Kubernetes base. Shopify, it's in VM base. And of course, the Gitpod. Gitpod was like previously it was Kubernetes based, and now it's more focused on the VM isolation thing. So yeah, this is like a major thing. We will be going to the deeper part in the next slide. So what Uber has the challenge for, like they have like a crazy, like of course the globally distributed team. They have like the basal build system, and so they wanted to scale in terms of performance so that their build time and their developer time doesn't take much time to get things running. So they build the Kubernetes native solution for that. For the Shopify, so we can also come to the Shopify, the next thing. So this was like the whole result they got. But the major part, what they have succeeded with, is like the improvement in the Git status thing. Like it's, again, Git, it feels like a basic thing, but it becomes a huge problem when you have like a larger monorepos. And of course, so previously they used to have a whole internal database to maintain, because dev environments are like a stateful thing. So for example, you stop the environment and you're coming next day, resuming that. You want your exact changes at the same line. Like you don't want like your changes got gone away. Or like you, for example, you have the VS Code open, and the 3 tabs are open, and suddenly the whole tab's got closed. So we need the whole state thing. We can also store that. The Uber used something called CRDs, the custom resource definitions. So again, they were maintaining that state in that, so they don't need any internal database for that. So they also have the blog. So I will be linking out all the resources at the end, so you don't need to be worried about anything. Shopify is an interesting case. They started, of course, the same problem, local dev crisis. Their local machines, even like the powerful Mac machines, they were unable to handle the resource exhaustion. Was a major problem. And of course, the slower builds. Then they experimented with the GCM VMs, and it fails. Not fails in the technical way, but there were like some limitations because with the containers thing, you don't have the root access, the daemon access. And there are some projects which require the whole Kubernetes ecosystem inside a project. And so basically, it's like a Docker and Docker problem. So I think they tried to come up with the isospin thing, which is a VM-based solution which they have built internally, and also they have the blog about it. So again, I think the major feedback which they got is like the dual context thing. It was a confusing thing for the Shopify, and of course there was a limitation on the knowledge side. I think they don't wanted to invest that much for this, and so they ended up building isospin. And of course, in the blog when you go, it's like literally the CEO level insights they have provided. So it was not just a problem for the platform teams, it was also like a general concern for the whole leadership team at Shopify, that how we can make things faster. Other Kubernetes, so since more of people will be interesting, like why Gitpod left Kubernetes, because we were doing this for 6 years. And we have served around over 1.5 million users for this. But as the time goes, we saw the noisy neighbor problem. For the VM level, you get a better isolation when you come to the environment. Some might feel isn't it like a coming back solution, like you are coming back from pods to the VMs? But no, again, as I said, the dev environments are the stateful thing. You need proper isolation and proper states needs to be managed. And that's the reason that's one of the major reasons. There are more, but there's one of the major reasons why we shifted to the VMs. So currently it's single VM per environment. So and that could be also, some of them might think it's it can take a little bit more of a startup time. But again, you can also control it by caching it betterly, or that's the thing. And of course, with this VM level isolation thing, you can literally have the root access, the daemon access, so you can build your Kubernetes system, you can Kubernetes apps, and all the things which requires a nested virtualization, which was a greater win, because a lot of the enterprise users, they are required for how they can run the Kubernetes system, and which is relatively not possible with if you have the Kubernetes-based dev environments. And of course, you have a whole core, and a lot of the companies like AWS, GCP have more of the VM focused, even when you look at the cost explorer and all. So they're trying to build a lot of things around that, but I think that's the situation right now. And yeah, so what are the trade-offs? What are the architecture trade-offs, VM versus this Kubernetes? And of course, as I said, it's relatively startup time, you should get relatively increased because if your didn't scale well, it can take a lot of time. So this is the startup time when it's the first environment getting started. It's not I'm resuming an environment. It's the workspace is getting created for the first time. And of course, with the resuming thing, it would be, of course, having a caching, and then it becomes better. And I think the major cons with the Kubernetes we had, the noisy neighbor thing. So now we had a better isolation. So the major, not just a noisy neighbor as a jargon thing, but I think the major thing we were facing is suppose you have 10 members, and which a shared pool we have, shared compute we have, and one environment can take a lot of time, a lot of compute power, and then others would be suffering. So that again we need to. It becomes a management, on the management perspective, it becomes more complex task because again, you need to shift those environments to a different cluster. And that becomes a thing. And of course, the Docker daemon access is a major hardware win for us. And of course, there are still a lot of, which I really got to know, I think 1.5 years back. So VDIs is still one of the better solutions where people are using it, but we saw a lot of the issues with it. So again, the latency is one of the things. Again, you can configure it well, but again, it's a maximum limitation you have, and it's a lot costly because you need to have a bigger machine which can literally build it. And of course, then Personally, what we saw with our users who are coming from VDI to the CD environments, they often tell it, like it feels like we are just talking, just like working on something which is like super slow, and it's like a chaotic thing. I think that's one of the things we can solve it with the CDs. And of course, the security angle, there's a lot bigger security angle than you can have with the CDs. And again, it comes down what we as a platform engineers want. Like we don't want to keep maintaining the stuff. We also wanted to build the other integration and other solutions and focus on the other parts of the SDLC cycle. So that becomes another thing. And how we can, so with the CD, so this I will be taking example for again Uber. So they use, of course, there's a global distributed team. So it's like a multi-tenant. They have like, I think, centers in US, Europe, and I think mostly in the Asia region. So we have in Mumbai also. So they did like pretty good steps, like a good quick wins they have did. So there are some cases like which we just kept our workspace open, and you might be wondering like, oh, it just costing an environment. A simple one could be like a quick sleep, auto sleep cycle. Like, okay, of course, you can configure it because sometimes things are building. You can also configure the inactivity time. And you can also use the VM spot instances. Of course, it would be relatively cheaper and also like with the better performance. And what they did with so how the Uber manages the cost angle, because the moment we heard with the cloud thing, again, it would be like, okay, it would be super costly, how we can maintain that well, how we can scale it. It's like you can have that sort of hibernation mechanism in your CDE system, either, like suppose you have 3 instances, 3 in a different region, and there's a fixed working hours mostly. You can hibernate some of the bits and like some of the parts that it just totally cut off, and then now you're saving those of the cost. And the other teams are working, so again, you don't need to be worried about all the clusters are running and all the things are costing us. And of course, the overnight updates, the packages updates, the dependencies updates, it becomes overnight so that they can, so when the developer is coming in the morning, they can just directly focus on the actual stuff rather than dealing with like some other new patch, some security patch, and some other dependency patch. And on the basis of their blog, they saved around $2 million for that hibernation, so which they rolled out for the 1,000 developer, which is like a pretty win in terms of the money. And as a platform team, you can also, once you have the admin level control over the dev's machine, not as a control like you have to restrict something, but so there's like some sort of policies, security policies you need to take care of. You can also do that. Like you can have like automated compliance scanning that across the packages. So you just runs a sort of like a automation thing. It has the environment. It creates through the code. You have the sandbox running. It will return you the report and done. It will just close that thing. And also the policy agent you can set up. Like you don't need to. Now, for example, you configures that I just wanted to use Gemini and Cloud Code. I don't want to use certain restrictions. So you can also do the network level controlling, and also you can define those in an admin level thing. So like we were just using these features, and if anyone tries to like reconfigure the dev container, the platform team will get an alert that okay, someone is trying to update the configuration. You can have an approval, you can have a check that if it's good, you can approve, you can work on it. And again, it comes down what to choose, when to choose thing. Again, there's no single solution, like there's no single answer to it. Again, it also depends on what your company needs and what is the scale of the team right now. So of course, like for the easy start, like if you don't want to set up anything and all, like you're in your cloud provider accounts and all, you can of course start with like GitHub Codespaces, Gitpod, Replit, CodeSwim, just to get a gist like how things are working. You can play around with it in a side project, and then if you're like a 100, 200 devs company, you can have like a pro plan or something. On the pricing level, it is usually the same. The GitHub Codespaces, Gitpod, CodeSandbox is usually the same. But on the feature level, like suppose if you are using Bitbucket, And then again, you can't use something like GitHub Codespaces or GitLab Workspaces. And of course, the Code Sandbox also has the integrations, but again, you can't use your like the local IDs, the SSH thing. And the cost it will be same, but again, it could be changed. Like the more you use, the more it will be chargeable. And some companies have some strict security requirements, like you just wanted to hold in their cloud account. So for example, if someone is using AWS or GCP, they wanted to have this set up in their accounts, like most of our so self-hosted, but self-managed things. So they wanted to manage everything, like the cloud formation updates, the Terraform updates, whatever the CDEs of the CD as a solution would be required. There's another sort of thing which we have. It's like I think a lot of the Coder also has this. So it's like the self-hosted. Basically, it would be hosted in your cloud, and now they would be managing it. Like the companies would be managing it. So it basically, you don't need to be, as a platform engineer, you don't need to care about more that, okay, there's another update, and I need to run another certain commands to get things up and running. Again, it depends on your requirement, like how serious is the security thing, as it. And the cost model thing, of course, the AI thing we need to address. There are like tools which is available, like the GitHub Copilot, Cloud Code, and whatnot, like SourceGraph, AmpCode. It's like most of the plugins, extensions, which is based on thing. And then again, you have like another sort of tooling which you need to build if you're building a CDE, that you need to integrate with the cursors, remote dev extension, and then another VS Code thing, Windsurf thing, VS Code thing. To the native, it's all work on the Microsoft's remote development extension, but again, it varies because it is like it's just on the VS Code market registry, not on the Open VS6 registry. So again, you need to build a lot of the ecosystem integration manually if you're trying to build on your own. And of course, you need to have that something. And there's another approach which is getting recently famous, so that you both want a hybrid approach, that it could be like a JetBrains CI assistant, or the GitHub's Copilot workspaces, or Gitpod's ONA. So it's basically you have your environment. You can also chat it. You can also review your code while you're. So basically, AI pair programming session. So you just don't restrict to the chatting thing. You can also have your code review while you're writing something. So one thing is GitHub's Copilot workspace. It's pretty simple. Like you have your GitHub issue. It's working. You just click on a fix with GitHub Copilot workspace. It will create a plan, which you can see. And then again, it will come down to the action thing. Like you can also add the files. Like, of course, this Copilot workspace is mostly the browser-based thing. You can also open it in a GitHub Codespaces. But since it has like a context window thing, so you can also specify what are the files we need to change, what should be the plans and all. Again, it will do the changes. You can also update, open this in a GitHub Codespaces. You can do all your changes and back to work. ONA, which is like the Gitpod's software engineering agent, which is like you have an environment and each ONA agent is tied to your environment so that you can have a conversation, like a multiple workspace thing. You can get things up and running, and also you can chat with ONA. And since it's tied to your workspace, it's your environment, so that you don't need to be worried about the context thing, because it's like it's running in your thing. And suppose if you have like a quick changes, you don't need to open anything in local. It also integrates with the VS Code browser thing, so that you have a chat screen on left, on the code screen on right. You can see the changes, and boom, like you can do the PRs directly from it. So the productivity impact, because as a platform teams, we need to build a business case, like how these are useful. So like these are some of the research you can take a look at, or like some of the things you can use it. There are a lot of ROI calculators, like the return on investment, like how much you will be gaining by expending X amount of thing. There's one from Coder, there's one from Gitpod, there's a lot of the ROI calculator in general. I think GetDX is one of the good companies. Like they are also doing a lot of research on this, like how we can boost the productivity. So these are the tools, these are the research. I think it's all the 2024 research. So it's basically how you can reduce the onboarding time, how you can get less security incidents, how you can, basically how you can do much more things faster and like more reliably. So the how we can adopt it, like, so suppose, I think it's more, it's generally for every tool, like how the 30-60-90 plan should be for if you're trying to adopt a new tool. Of course, first, you need to answer the basic thing, like what are your pain points? Like what is the pain point? So if you are not that, like it's not, a productivity is not that a big of issue, you can hop to the other secret point. Or if there might be cases you might not need it. Like it's not like, okay, everyone needs that thing. People could be happy in the local environment also. And again, for the larger companies, they still need to decide, like they have to build it, if they can. I think, so for my experience, it feels like the building could be relatively good. You can build the first step. You have the V1, it's working. I think the managing where it comes like a major problem, like how we'll maintain that solution over the time so that your team and also the devs are happy in general. And this is like a sort of a small plan you can have, of course. So the major thing with every tooling, even the AI adoption in companies, you need a group of power users for that, like who would be interesting to give a critical feedbacks for your tooling, for your solution you have tried to come up with. They will criticize you, you will try to solve those pain points and then have a, so for example, there could be one issue like, okay, then do I need to configure the dev container file for my each repo? No. Like, of course, you can get it done with AI also, that's another thing, but that's one thing, like maybe the power users can help with it, or like the platform teams can help with it, say whoever the maintaining the docs in the older days, they can just have a single JSON spec and everything should be. Again, it could be like ifs and buts that, okay, then now we have to maintain another bit. But I think it's relatively better to maintain like a 1,500,000 lines of README doc instead of like having a single JSON file, which is more readable. And of course, you need to prove the leadership, like, okay, we have like a good solution, it does this thing. You need to have a good metrics to prove on that this was the previous, like the startup time and all this thing. And also, what is the amount of time you're taking to get your first hire, creating a PR, to solving an issue for the first time. These are the metrics you can focus on and how we can get things boosted. Like basically, previously onboarding takes around 10 days, now it's like 1 day or like some hours. So that's like a win in terms of the metrics. You can configure that. And of course, a lot of the companies maintain the NPS scores, which is like a good thing, and it's like a good way how the developers you are happy, like how your developers are happy. So you can also track these things. And of course, the security part is how we sort of miss that what all the incidents it used to happen. It's relatively, not zero, I would say, but at least less than 10%, 5% thing. And of course, there are business metrics that you need to take care about the whole cost thing, that it should be paying a good ROI in general. So yeah, these are the whole takeaways we took. And now, like, if you have any questions, you can ask it. And also, I will be roaming around today and tomorrow, so that if there's like we have a lesser time, then we can also take the questions after the conference. But yeah, and you can also ask like after the around the Gitpod and not after, because I'm just more interested in this ecosystem. So I think this would help. And so we generally discuss about these three main things, so like the VM based, or like how Ubers did it, how Shopify did it, and why Gitpod now is the VM based thing. And so these are if you scan this QR code, this would contain a GitHub gist, which will link all the research I did, all the blogs, all the research thing, like all of the DORA report and all the things. You can also connect me, I think mostly on Twitter or LinkedIn. I will be active on. If you are trying to build some of the AI projects and all, you can also try to follow me on GitHub. I'm trying to build some fun POCs or all. it could be helpful generally for developers or platform engineers. So, yep. Any questions? I think we have like 3 minutes left for us. Yeah. Okay, I think if we don't have any questions, or if you hesitate to ask it here, we can also discuss it like after the talk. Okay, yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot.